Hey folks, Nathan P. Butler here. Welcome to Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games, and this is our 8th episode, taking a look at the Power Rangers deck building game. Last time we took a look at Shattered Grid, which is designed to allow you to use your entire collection all at once. But when it comes to storing your entire collection, that's where the storage box comes in. So we're holding off on taking a look at the last expansion, which we will look at next, because it really makes more sense to see that once we see what is inside this particular box. So this is the storage box, and before you go clicking away like, oh wow, he's going to show us where to put his cards, click! This also is where we are introduced to solo mode for the Power Rangers deck building game. If you're ever going to play solo, you need the components in this box. Unfortunately, it's a pretty crappy box overall. First off, notice there's some spot UV, it's not glossy or anything, it's just kind of this thick folded cardboard, just like if you were buying, a blank white card box, folding it together yourself and sticking some cards in it. That's really all that it is. It's not great quality construction. Sturdy, but not fancy. You have your solo rules here that we'll look at in just a moment. It is just a single sheet, relatively large here. And this is your storage box itself. This is with my entire collection in here, except for the stuff that maddeningly doesn't fit in the freaking box. I think this is actually the same box design, if I'm not mistaken, that they used for Heroes of the Grid, so maybe it was just we're going to have them put their cards in the box, but everything else won't go in there. Either way, you can't put your entire collection, including all of the components, into this box. One reason is because if you look here, the walls go basically all the way up to the top. So without having quite a bit of lid lift, you cannot put the rule books inside the box. So your rule books have to be somewhere else. Likewise, the Zord bays, even if you put them kind of diagonally, do not fit well inside here. Some of them will, some of them will not, so you're still going to have a place to put some of your Zord bays as well. What I've done, if I can move stuff out of there, is basically use this middle section for the health and energy trackers, because now if you've got the core set, Zeo, and the bonus boxes for both of those, you have 4 of them for the heroes and 4 of them for the villains, way more than you'll ever need. I can put the layers in here, one of which we haven't seen yet. We'll see when we look at It's Morphin' Time, the next small expansion. And this is where I put all of my cut open packets for the bonus packs, at least for now while I'm keeping them. I doubt they'll be there long. But that's basically it. That's pretty much all that I can fit in here. So I got 2 big rule books that won't really fit, 6 little rule books, including one for an expansion we'll see next time that won't fit in there. And 4 Zord bays, again, one that we haven't seen yet, one from Zeo, one from the core set, and then one from the first bonus box that either won't fit or don't easily fit. And they certainly all can't fit together. What a truly dumbass way to design a box that is supposed to be able to fit your collection. On the other hand, they did give us a couple of these little very flimsy trays to put stuff in. So in this case, what I did, and put this back in here, as I grabbed all of those Conquest tokens and put those in a baggie, the RPM tokens in a baggie, the Omega coins in a baggie, the player notation ones from both core sets, and stuff that we will see in It's Morphin' Time in their own little baggies in that little tray. Then on this side, I've got basically the 2 core sets, and this is where it really does kind of shine. They give you not just a divider for the set, which is typically what we see with those nice plastic dividers in, say, the DC deck building game with its universal storage box, the multiverse box. Instead, we get one that gives you the name of the set with its symbol, then usually dividers for starters if there are any, main deck cards, whatever the blasters are, stun if there is any, Master Zord and Mega cards, signature cards, and oddball stuff like promos, the solo deck as we will see, various components for Shattered Grid, and so on. So they give you a whole bunch of dividers. Granted, the dividers aren't nearly as high quality as you would see in something like the DC deck building game or in Hero Realms or Star Realms, but they are functional, and I do like the fact that they're set up with those offset tabs so that from either side, you can set it up with alternating sides of tabs to make it easier to see what you're looking for. That's a nice touch. There's also some color coding here, so it's not just the symbol. The colors are a little bit different for the different sets. So again, core set Zeo. There are also a fair number of spares that you got here. So if you ever need spare dividers of any kind. You've got some of those, quite a few. Over here on this side, I've got all the expansions. So we got Omega Forever, Flying Higher, RPM, SPD, Shattered Grid. It's Morphin Time that we're going to see next. Then the promos, like the White Ranger Tommy cards, for example, and then the solo deck. Then there's another of these that you can put wherever. I put them in front of the expansions because they fit well, but boy, it's flimsy. I got to be real careful I don't damage the freaking thing when I take it out, because it's just card stock, basically. Tilt those a little bit so they don't go falling everywhere, hopefully. This is where you'll have dividers that you can put in for your large cards, typically heroes and villains, but other ones like, the containment card, for example, and stuff like that. And yes, there are extra dividers, though not as many, for these as well. So to some degree, they are somewhat future-proofing it by giving you plenty of space, because if you're not going to be able to really put much there, you could put cards here as well, move this stuff into the center and remove that, whatever. If you're sleeving, you might have a harder time, but at least for now, plenty of room for anything they throw at us in terms of cards, but not so much with other components. I would note, by the way, that when it comes to those dividers, it does come with all the dividers necessary for every set up through Shattered Grid. It does not include its Morphin Time because it wasn't out yet. We'll see how they handle that in the next episode. The really important part of the storage box is the solo mode. So that's how we'll wrap this up. So this is the solo mode. For the most part, your solo opponent, the bot you're playing against, is going to play like a regular human player. They have a character, they're going to be attaching things, they're going to be playing cards, they'll have a deck, they'll have a hand, and so on. It's just that some of their choices are automated. It's relatively smooth to play, although because the different sets might have different interactions or different unique things that are happening, there are some clarifications on the back of this sheet here. Other clarifications are in an FAQ over on Board Game Geek. Most of the decision making is going to be done by a solo deck. So the solo deck is made up of just these 10 cards here. They're all going to have a name, a bonus action, a card focus type, and might, half of them, have an energy payment icon. We'll talk about what all those mean, except the name that's, obvious, just the name of the card, as we go through how the solo bot's turn plays out. Your turn plays out effectively the same. One thing that is different in the start of the game is that whereas in a regular game, the villains always go first, in this case, since you can play as either a hero or villain versus the opposite, the AI will always go first, you will always go second. So on a foe's turn, you're going to draw one of these cards to begin with. You check the bonus action text. If there is an immediately effect, it happens now. So immediately gain 4 shards, 5 energy, or 4 health. 3 out of the 10, so 30%, have an immediate effect. The other ones don't, so they don't trigger yet. And as I mentioned, they are going to have a hand, it's just that the foe's hand is kept face down once it's drawn, so you don't know what they have. But then they're going to flip it over, you're going to reveal the foe's hand, and the first thing they're going to do is if there are any cards in that hand that they can attach, they're going to do that immediately. Even if it leaves them with a weak hand, they're going to attach because that gives them more versatility. Then any other cards that are left in their hand, they're just going to play them. And remember, playing typically just gets the resources on them, the shards or the energy, unless they happen to be those rare cases where instead of an energy cost or attachment ability, it's just something like, when played, if you're at 20 health or below, gain 2 health and otherwise gain 1 health or whatever. So most of the time it's just for resources, but they do get those other effects. They don't get ignored. And if at any point there is a choice to be made for the AI, they will make that choice affirmatively if possible. So what are they going to do with their shards and energy? Where energy is easy. It just goes in their energy pool. Simple enough. What about the shards? What are they going to buy with those? That's where the card focus comes in. There are 2 cards each for each card type. Equipment, maneuver, hero, villain, location. The first thing they're going to do is ignore that initially. And they're going to try to either buy a Master or Zord card, either theirs first or one of the other ones that are available, or their signature item, prioritizing a Master or Zord before the signature item. So they're trying to go for the really powerful stuff initially, just like they tried to build themselves up with attachments initially. If, however, they can't buy a Zord or signature item, then they look at the grid and they look for whatever card has the highest cost that they can afford of whatever type it is that is on that focus card. So if it's a hero and they're a hero, they're going to try to purchase that hero. If it says hero and they're a villain, they're going to try to battle that hero. So it's either purchasing or battling. Obviously, with equipment, locations, and maneuvers, it's always just purchasing. If there's a tie, they're going to go for the one that is closest to the grid's main deck. If they can't afford any of that type, it is not really clarified well enough here, but basically they're going to go for cards of a type that they could attach, and again, look for the highest cost they can afford, breaking ties that's closer to the deck, or just whatever has the highest cost that they can afford that's then closest to the deck. So there is sort of a rational strategy to what the bot does, and it pretty much matches what you would usually see a human player trying to do in terms of broader strategy. And they will buy multiple cards if they can, and if they can't afford ones in the grid, they will actually go for those blasters, those basic cards. Now we flip it. Let's see what happens next. Step 5. If there is an energy payment icon, and again, half of them have that, one from each focus type, then if that character has an energy payment ability on their actual character card, so most of the time that's going to be on the empowered side or the ranger side, not the scheming or the teenager side, but that does vary, then they're going to use it. They still have to pay, but they're going to use it. But only if that symbol is on the solo card for that turn. Otherwise, they do not. Then if they have any cards attached to their character, they will try to use whichever attached card is ready, which typically they will be, that will deal the most damage to you. And they get to do that for free without spending any energy. And if they don't have any that actually deal damage to you, then by default, they get an attack deal 3 damage ability that triggers right then. So again, if there's an icon, they do their main character ability on the character card. Regardless, they're going to trigger one of their attached cards, if there are any, looking for the one that deals the most damage to you, and if there isn't one, they're going to hit you for 3 damage as an attack. Every single time. That almost feels like that should be 2 separate steps in the process, because one of them happens only sometimes, the other happens every time. Then, step 6. If the bonus action, right, this kind of thing, was not resolved, so if it wasn't one of those immediately 3, that's now when it resolves. So it might activate attached cards. It might target a foe and cause them to discard a card, or it might get you to shuffle the highest cost card of the discard pile into the deck, or just whatever. Just different abilities depending on the card. Then if your foe is a ranger, so that it only applies if you're playing as a villain against a hero, and that hero is on their ranger side, they're going to use a number of available Zords equal to the activations on the current Zord Bay or Megazord. So Megazords often have like 3 or 5. The Zord Bay usually just has 1. They're going to activate as many as they can. And if they're all exhausted, they're going to use the Zord Bay or Megazord ability that's going to do some refreshing if it's possible. But they're not going to use any more Zords afterwards if they do that. After that, their turn is effectively over. Any of the cards they played, anything still in the hand, all get discarded just like they would for a player's turn. You draw up to 5 for them, but you keep them face down for the next turn. You discard the solo card, and that's it, at least as far as the sequence of the turn goes. There is some churn to the deck, though, for you. So at the beginning of each of your turns, you're going to discard the non-adversary card that's closest to the main deck, and slide all the remaining cards in the grid toward the main deck, and then refill it starting at the far end of the grid. So instead of just filling empty spaces, there's kind of a constant churn going on. But it is important that it is non-adversary, because remember, if there's an adversary in the grid at the end of your turn, it's going to hit you for a damage. And yes, it doesn't say it anywhere in these rules, which is a pretty big oversight. Yes, the bot is going to get hit by the adversaries at the end of their turn as well. But since that's a normal part of the turn, it's not mentioned for some freaking reason. They had to put it in the FAQ or answer it on BGG. And there are a couple of other clarifications to give you a sense of how the bot plays in terms of decision making. As far as blocks go, the foe will block any attacks that deal 3 or more damage if able, but not lower damage ones. But they'll only use what's referred to as visible blocks to do so. So like if there's a Zord that blocks, yes. If there's an attached card on their character, yes. But they're not going to use any from their hand because those aren't visible. You don't know what's in their hand. Then if they're going to either discard or destroy cards, whether they're being forced to do it or just allowed to do it, they're going to prioritize starters that don't provide shards, then starters that do provide shards, like Mayhem or Teamwork, and then it'll be basic or main deck cards. For basic or main deck, you select randomly, and when you're forced to choose an attached card to discard, you also choose randomly. So like if there's an attached card from the character being discarded, maybe something from the layer, then you're just gonna randomly determine that as well. I have to say, I actually do really like this solo mode. It feels like when you get this out of the box, oh man, this solo mode's gonna suck. There's just not much to it. Surely there's gotta be more than that. But actually, no. This plays well with the various different sets, particularly with the clarifications in the FAQ. The deck allows some automation that works well. It may not always make the best decisions for the foe. For example, you might have a card focus that maybe isn't what they should probably be focusing on right now. Such as, for example, having a focus on heroes when maybe there's just the one hero to purchase, but boy, there's a lot of villains out there that are going to smack them at the end of the turn. But to some degree, that's an aspect of your strategy as the player, trying to leave as many adversaries for the opponent in the grid at a time as you can, rather than necessarily acquiring them yourself, because you know that at least until they churn through the grid and disappear, you're going to be able to hit them at the end of each turn. So whereas that does make for kind of wonky decision making every great once in a while when you're playing, I feel like it just adds a little bit to the player's strategy, so it works out fine. It's not the most robust solo version of a deck building game I've ever seen, but it is functional and fun enough to allow solo to be a viable way to play the Power Rangers deck building game. So there you have it, folks, a storage box that is really a mixed bag. Nice dividers, though not premium, plenty of space for all of your cards, and the only place to get the solo mode for the Power Rangers deck building game. But boy did they blow it in terms of the quality of the box, at least compared to many other games, and the ability to store any of the non-card and non-token components. Where am I supposed to put the Zord bays? Where am I supposed to put the rulebooks? Oh, somewhere else. Not a great option for a storage box. Personally though, I did find it worthwhile even though it is frustrating. Next time we'll take a look at the last of the small expansions released so far, as of recording this in the latter part of 2025, called It's Morphin' Time. And it's going to include a bonus pack as well, and we will see not just those contents, but how the expansion and the bonus pack allow us to make use of both the storage box and shattered grid that we saw in the last episode. One more of these to go for now.